Greetings and salutations, you stunning individuals. It's another episode of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for a little bit of LCK player rankings. And fresh off of the LCS one, let me tell you, these ones hit a little bit different from the top to the bottom, very much so.
I think I'll leave it up to the viewers and maybe to the rest of the year to prove that the LCS is not the lightweight division of all the major regions, but certainly looking at the LCK, very instantly recognizing that this is the heavyweight, the super heavyweight division when you are talking about looking through the player rankings and going through each individual position. Yeah, there be some monsters lurking in the sea over there in the LCK. Let's jump into these players.
I'm going to hit the LCS with the Featherweight title, I think, even beyond lightweight, especially looking at this list. But yes, we will begin that top side, and truthfully, for the majority of these roles, I think the top three, you can argue the order, but the three guys are pretty cut and dry. Top lane, no exception. You got Zeus, Keen, and Doran hanging out there, and we're putting Zeus, kind of reclaiming that top spot. I know Keen had an incredibly consistent year throughout all of 2025, but heading into this year, and much like Split 1 last year, the potential for Zeus to be the best top laner on the planet is still very much there, and he will reach it at some point. It's just, how long does he keep it?
Yeah, I think that certainly is the expectation heading into this season, having those three at the very top as far as where the top laners are, and especially with Zeus reclaiming that top spot in that area. I think last year, overall, through the course of the year, you could throw him into that conversation at times, but never clearly the outright beast of that top side. And I think the way that Hanwha Life truly envisioned him to be able to handle that type of load for them and be that type of carry player, it didn't fully envision out, but I think that this is certainly going to be the year where you can see a lot more of that gameplay coming through from him, taking that next step. 1 year, again, another year removed from moving away from T1 and having that type of space between it, having Kanavi come over, having Gumayushi come over. I see a lot of good positive signs that we are going to see the Zeus that has built up his name and recognition already in his career.
And, obviously, with Peanut stepping away, they're going to have to rebuild that synergy with Kanavi, but an opportunity for Zeus to step furthermore into that leadership role for Hanwha Life. Now, those three are alone there, but that doesn't mean the progression, evolution, development of a dude like Siwoo doesn't have the opportunity and skill set to climb into this top three this year. In his second year, we already saw him be a focal point guy for D plus Kia as one of the youngest players in the LCK. So I'm super excited to see his continued growth, and the future is on the top three of this board for him.
Yeah, Siwoo certainly is one of those ones destined to enter in that conversation. The question is going to be, can he get there soon enough that it's a conversation about a top four now in the LCK? Or is it simply going to take a bit longer, where it's going to be maybe one of these guys drops out, goes to a different region, and it is more so still that top three type of situation. But he is absolutely on that rise in the LCK. And another similar guy that I could look at just a couple spots down is Perfect with KT Rolster. Certainly someone that showed us a lot more growth and signs towards especially that later second half of the year and through the World Championship, that this is, I would say, a conservative spot for him at this point for what we can expect from him, and hope that we do see him climbing up this list. Kind of like a similarity, I'll call it, to the LCS, where it is a bit more that prove me type of situation. He proved himself a little bit more last year, but there still is some ways to go as far as what you're contending with in the LCK.
Yeah, and he's surrounded by some other guys that are question marks. Obviously, Casting, the guy he split time with throughout 2025. Kingen, we know, can be number 1 on this list on one series and number 10 on this list in another one, although he's been more consistent since he joined Nogshim, so give him credit where credit's due. And Rich and Dudu, I think, were an easy bottom 2 on this list.
Yeah, I think that is certainly where you can establish that floor when you're talking about the top lane in the LCK. But I think that Kingen is that nice last kind of representation of just showing you what type of lethality exists here in the top lane and what is possible for the LCK when you've got someone that can occasionally get to a world championship MVP type of level in Kingen. It's not always available for the Nongshim side. So certainly going to be one of those ones that you're keeping track of throughout the year.
Jungle side of things, it's following that same theme where you have a D plus guy hanging out, trying to knock on to that top 3 lounge of junglers, and that is of course Lucid we're talking about, and it's the same 3 representatives rounding out that top 3, and albeit a little bit of a different order. I think you've got to give the recognition for what Owner did, not just at the World Championship, but throughout all of 2025. That combined with what was let's face it, despite their dominance, a little bit of a down year out of Canyon, I think Owner is no question the number 1 jungler heading into this year.
This is very well deserved for Owner to capture this spot and climb to this type of position within the LCK. And given what we saw last year, as you laid out, really being that one of the main, if not the main engine that was driving, ensuring success for T1 last year throughout the entirety of the year, and especially during that World Championship. Yes, Owner has to get that nod in that position, even with Kanavi coming over with a little bit of steam, some excitement for what he can possibly do with Hanwha Life, being that difference in style from Peanut and what is going to be capable for another high-octane team in the LCK. And Canyon, who I think is going to have that bounce-back year individually, because it is so strange and rare to see him individually not succeed, not to excel, and really be one of the standout names, because he wasn't last year with Genji.
Yeah, and like more often than not, he was kind of the first name that if there was an underperformance out of Genji, it was Canyon, the guy that you were talking about. We'll save the choky memes for some of the world's performances. Yes, some of that was bad, but for the most part, the rare time Genji were losing games or behind, you're saying, what's up with Canyon? He doesn't seem like he's in his peak form, and a lot of that is obviously the standards and expectations for him, and Genji are absolutely at real another level. But as you go down this list, you know, I think Cuz is a guy who maybe you could put ahead of Lucid, because he, alongside BDD, was that 2-pronged attack for KT Rolster.
Really, the T1 Cuz, KT Cuz coming back type of, response from him last year when you're looking at the performance that you're able to get. Certainly someone that I would be keeping that attention to and watching through the LCK. And again, if that is your, middle of the pack LCK jungler, you've got a scary group of junglers that are hanging around there. If that's just the middle tier when you're talking about what Cuz can bring to the table and how he can change a game for his squad, I really do like this group in the jungle as well, because then you can even move off from Cuz and look at someone like Pyosik, who can have that type of effect, can be an effective jungler if he can find the right type of pick, right type of meta. I think that is absolutely one of the angles that I'm still holding out for a hopeful rebound, I think, or a little bit more of an improvement next time around in the LCK.
Yeah, and obviously his whole squad, which of course we got rebrand number 1. It's the DN Supers, all caps on the SOOP, which sounds like a name you would call your middle school dodgeball team. I'm not so sure about this rebrand here, but Pyosik right behind a guy like Vincenzo, who I think is one of the most, maybe the most hyped up rookie coming into this year. And because that bottom half of the junglers are guys have been around for a little while, maybe haven't reached their ceiling, but we've seen enough of them that I have high hopes for Vincenzo kind of hitting the ground running. We're not going to slot him in the top 5 or anything, but this is a guy who's going to grow to be a premier jungler in the LCK.
I think this is really the territory where it kind of feels like stepping out onto a frozen lake, right? You've got absolutely the very solid, you're on ground talking about the owners, talking about Kanavi and everything else. And then you start moving out towards the middle of the lake, starting to get towards that thinner ice that you're starting to hear the cracks in. I think that's where you're starting to right here. Vincenzo is right where I would draw that line as far as the junglers go in the LCK, where you can have a little bit of that caution in that next step that you are taking. And for Vincenzo, that's simply just about moving up to that next tier of competition and difficulty that he's going to face at this point. But again, another guy that has clearly shown all the signs early on that he is certainly one of these names that is going to be rocketing up this list possibly.
And again, like as a rookie, not much exposure on that main stage. We give a lot more clout to the challenger scene of the LCK than any challenger scene you're talking about in North America. And even some of the EMEA or Tier 2 ERLs over in Europe. LCK Challenger is where the stars are groomed to eventually go to other regions. But Vincenzo staying home and getting the start over on DRX. Mid lane action is, of course, the board where you really compare to other regions in there. It's a little eye-popping going, oh boy, we got a world champion MVP Scout hanging in the 7 area on this list. And this is the big, I think, year for Scout to answer the questions, is this dude washed or not?
Big time. Big time. It's going to be that answer you're going to find from Scout, and certainly one of these ones where the name, the pedigree absolutely would demand a higher position in this list. But I think that the last year and a half or so has been so painful for someone like Scout and for the Scout fan base that, yeah, you have to resign yourself into a position like this, given as well what is ahead of you, what still remains within the mid lane pool of the LCK. Again, talking about the monsters and the scary things that exist in top lane and mid lane, you go to the depth that you have within the mid lane. That is, again, where you start to see the difference in level that the LCK is able to bring to the table.
I mean, even Closer at 10, it feels harsh. Someone's got to be 10. Closer's really not that bad. He's more than serviceable. Vikla has kind of had a bounce back on FearX since the debacle that was FlyQuest. So really, top to bottom, it's a pretty solid lineup. And then, you get to this godfathers of mid lane that can now almost extend to 5, as we got Showmaker in that 5 spot. I feel like people might argue back and forth between him and Zeka, but Zeka really turned it on the second half of the year last year. And I know the GOAT is always the GOAT. He will always remain the GOAT. That is Faker. But I don't think anyone would be putting him in that top spot heading into this year unless it's Game 5 of the World Championship specifically you're talking about.
It's so crazy that you can look at all these other players and absolutely make more than viable arguments and cases about why you prefer them over the other when you're talking about this elite group that stacks up the top of the LCK mid lane. But it certainly is one of those ones where you're hand-picking, I'll take BDD for this, and I'll take Chovy for this and that, and all sorts of things. Yes, you pretty much only refer to a Game 5 do or die, make or break type of moment where you go, okay, throw all that stuff aside. This is clearly the guy in Faker out of what we have seen proven and what he has carved his entirety legacy career out of doing. So yeah, that absolutely does need to be accounted for, does need to be valued. But it is still one of these ones when you are doing that overall power ranking and you are considering everything else, you do got to slot some of these other guys into this tier. And that's just the reality of having these elite tier mid laners that you got in the LCK.
And remember, it's been 2022, the last time Faker actually captured an LCK title. Yes, 3-peat World Championship. I think he'll take over any amount of LCK champions, but it has still been the Chovy show within the LCK for the last 3 years.
And there's no question about that, but I think that there is certainly going to be more than ever the hot water, the hot seat type of treatment for someone like Chovy to get the international success, the international recognition that someone like Faker has already accumulated so much of in his career. And even, guys like behind him, when you're looking at Zeka, when you're talking about Showmaker, still looking to add a little bit more to their type of legacy, to their Power Stone status here in the LCK. Certainly still that type of list, that type of pecking order when you've got that here. But again, look at this quality. Think about all the star plays, all the abilities, and how much you could trust all 5 of these guys to be that guy, the guy on your team. Is something really incredible and special in the LCK.
And last note on this one has got to be, BDD had such an insane year. A revamped, seemingly weaker bot lane coming in. I'm hard-pressed to believe he can be on this squad and still be talked about as that second-best mid laner with those 3 guys immediately behind him.
It's going to take a lot of work. But if we have seen anybody be able to be the Atlas, to hold up the whole world for an organization, well, BDD has been that guy so far for KT Rolster. So certainly one of the ones that, yes, they're going to have to be banking on that again. But if there was a guy to bank on that type of carry performance, BDD is going to be in that line. And I think some of the changes that are coming towards the mid lane and the champion pool that BDD can expose, I think he is primed to have a very good start to the year in 2026.
We roll to the bot lane, and this is where a little spice will come. Mark's gonna battle me on this one probably, but we go AD carries, and again, like the rest of this list, I think the top 3 is locked in. You're gonna have Ruler, Gumayusi, and Pays. The order is very much debatable, but no question, those are your top 3. I got Pays in that top spot, and hear me out now. This guy had highlight reel play after highlight reel play on a, let's say, subpar JD Gaming. And we already see in these preseason, maybe less meaningful, not maybe, definitely less meaningful tournaments, T1 wants this guy to succeed. This organization has won so much, they just prioritize whoever the new guy is to make sure he's comfortable and can stand out. Feel like there's going to be more adapting for a guy like Gumayusi on an entirely new lineup, whereas Pays is going to be catered to, and I feel like we're going to get an absolutely insane year out of this guy.
That's how it works now, right? The 7th World Championship title, that one's for Pays, right? That's how that
They
works.
need to add a new guy every year.
Yeah, this is absolutely the conversation to be having. We can, go back and forth type of thing about whether Pays truly is the number 1 and who would you rather there in Gumayusi and how Ruler, how do you really position that 3? As long as you're having a conversation about these 3 at the top of the LCK, I'm okay with that type of conversation. Wherever the pieces are gonna fall out here at this point where you're stacking them, fine with me. But that has to be where you're starting that conversation. And that to me is about giving Pays the respect that he belongs in this conversation with the monsters, with the terrifying demons of Ruler and Gumayusi that have carved out such incredible careers. When you're looking at obviously Ruler as far as his individual power level, his stance within being one of the guys that you can bet on within the game. And then you're looking at Gumayusi to a similar degree, but he adds in the World Championships, the second best jungler on T1 throughout the time, and everything else that he brings as well. Yeah, it's a heck of an argument to be making, and certainly one of these ones where I think personally, I'm going to value the championships that Gumayusi has earned and really hard fought with T1 over what some of the flash and excitement that does come over when I'm talking about Ruler and Pays. But that doesn't mean that those two aren't in that same type of conversation, same type of category. And I think really it's going to be about how much respect do you have for Pays and what he went through last year with JDG and how much you were paying attention individually to his performances, because if you're going off of the Gen G era, absolutely you could buy into this being the territory. But I think for some people it took a little bit of a hit, or maybe they weren't paying enough attention given the lack of full success that JDG was able to have last year with him on the team. But make no second guesses. Yes, this is someone that is going to find success with T1, and you're right. T1, all these members, Kyria, his best buddy, they're all really motivated to make sure that this is a successful move for him.
I've already seen this guy playing Vayne a couple times in some of these Kespa and other events. So yeah, they want to get him rolling. And even look at this list. Diablo and Smash are, the young guns coming up here vying for that top 3. The talent pool, having Teddy this low, maybe you could put him have aiming, but this is the only role I think that you can compare to mid lane in the LCK, where the talent pool is just so unbelievably stacked, and we're blessed with a whole lot of talented AD carries. We're also blessed with a whole lot of talented supports in the bot lane, and again, we push forward this theme of Hanwha, Gen G, T1 kind of rounding out top 3s on a lot of these lists. I think Kyria, despite Duro having absolutely such an incredible year, and I think well exceeding anyone's expectations for him on this Gen G roster, I don't think anyone's putting him ahead of Kyria heading into the year, right?
No, you can't. You absolutely cannot, even through the downs and some, strange moments last year. I think when you're talking about the overall expected quality that you can get from Kyria, there's no mistaking the ability, the creativity, the playmaking that he is able to bring towards that T1 bot lane, and what type of excellency it really brings out of this organization. And no question to me, he's got to be that very top of the support rankings, but it is not as much of a gap as it had been in previous years when you're talking about who is behind him and who could climb up to that type of tier of quality. I think that there is certainly going to be a conversation about that this year in the LCK.
And there were times last year that you would have had Duro ahead of Kyria at times in the LCK where he was standing out on this stacked Gen G roster. But yeah, again, the World Championship kind of shifting things back in Kyria's way. And I'm very curious to see how Peter and Doc Dom do on this super DN squad. Can they drag this team from the bottom? Because it felt like they got the short end of the stick in the offseason. They deserved better after what especially Peter did for KT.
Yeah, I think there was certainly more than enough of the positive signs that you can make that case for them to get that extension, to stay on, and to get better opportunity. But things don't fall the way that they do. They do sort themselves out in the offseason, and we do end up where they are. And it's one of these ones where I think for Peter, certainly, you are having those type of high hopes, type of trying to see that you are going to get more of the good than the bad that you had from last year. I think as well, you can extend that, I think, even to a little bit further down, and someone like Lehens as well is going to be in that type of category for the support role.
Yeah, and as we kind of touched on Kingen being a more consistent guy on Nongshim, Lehens also has been the case. I mean, this mix of veteran and younger guys on Nongshim is going to be interesting to see how, Scout fits in here, as we already alluded to, and what level these guys can actually be at consistently. And then at the bottom of the list here, we got the role swap Ghost. I want to be proven wrong. I'm not fully buying into him as support on this new KT squad with aiming, but maybe he'll shut us up.
I've seen crazier things, right?
Yeah.
At that type of point. So certainly willing to entertain it, but absolutely not going to be one of these ones where you're, oh my God, this absolutely is going to work out. Throw him a couple spots up high. It ain't anything like that. So certainly open-minded about it, but very much so no expectations as far as the results on that one.
It is the easiest role swap to do. 80 carry to support, so maybe. Lots of things to be proven wrong on this list, but that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.